welcome to We Never Met, where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today we have, if you want to introduce yourself, I don't want to mess up your last name, so if you want to go for it.
Yeah, my name is Jason Heglund. It's pretty easy to pronounce. I mean, it's pretty much pronounced exactly the way you spell it.
Yeah, you never know, though. You never know with last names. People are very particular sometimes, too. So, you're an artist, you're an illustrator, a writer. I was just saying to you before that I was watching you go through and read it's your first children's book, right? That you wrote and illustrated?
Yeah, that's right.
And I wanted to ask about that because I've talked to other artists on the podcast before, and a lot of them don't want to do books because it's really hard to draw things consistently over and over and over again. Was that something that was difficult for you, or do you have any experience? Like, why did you decide to even start creating or make a children's book? I know you have kids as well, but
it all started back in 2015, or maybe it was 2014. I had two local authors, first-time authors, reach out to me because they saw some of the stuff that I'd been drawing on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And they approached me about this kids book that they wanted to write, or they wanted me to draw the pictures for. Sure. And I'd never done anything like that before. And at the time, the drawings and stuff that I was posting on Instagram was all very simple, kind of not necessarily refined. That was like when I was starting to rediscover the drawing. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. So then I started working with them on the book, and it was a really good experience. Both of them are awesome people, and I still talk with them fairly regularly. They live in Portland. And it was a book about coding, and they wanted to use all my monster creatures to help make the whole coding thing more fun and approachable to kids. Sure. And then they wanted to do Kickstarter to get that book printed and brought to life. And man, they did so much research. They were so prepared for the Kickstarter. I helped them do a whole bunch of like graphics and fun stuff to help promote everything, but it did really good on Kickstarter. It did way better than they expected. And so when I started working on that project, I started thinking about, well, what kind of story would I write if I was to be my own client, basically. Sure. And so I started collecting ideas since then. You know, that kind of led up to the book that I just put out in my shop in October. It was a long time coming to be able to like get to that point where I wrote, illustrated, and figured out how to get it manufactured all myself. I worked at a print shop for years, and so very familiar with production and all that stuff. And my neighbor, he writes kids' books, and actually I've created his two most recent books. And so he kind of gave me his process for getting the books printed, because he doesn't do the artwork for the books. He just writes, then he finds an artist, and then he sends it to a manufacturer over in China and has the books made. So I used his process to get this book made. And so I thought that it went fairly well, except for the whole pandemic thing kind of made some problems, but whatever. Just even
going way back, you had sort of like an off and on artistic career. You were very into it as a kid, and then you sort of fell off, I guess, and started doing other things, and then came back to it later. As a kid, were you sort of drawing similar things? I know I read you were drawing like Batman and Ninja Turtles, and you were interested in stuff like that. Were you into like the monster sort of and things that you draw now, or was it very different as a kid drawing?
It was different. Yeah. As a kid, it was all centered around what we consider pop culture stuff now, like Ninja Turtles, Batman, Wolverine, and then Stickman Wars. Those are always fun.
Sure.
But that was back in elementary school, and then I think the drawing kind of like toned down in middle school and high school. Still drew, but not very much. Probably because, in middle school and high school, you're learning lots of other new things. You take your interests. In high school, I did take like all the art classes, shop class. I even took an architecture class in freshman year. My parents actually thought that I could be a good architect, and so they enrolled me for one of the architecture class because of my enjoyment in drawing. Sure. And I did the class, and I think I did fine, but I don't think at the time I realized I'm not really made for architecture. So like if I look back at it now, I think, okay, the way that I operate is very much like not necessarily shoot from the hip, but like, oh, I'm going to take a look and see how that works. I'm not good at math. Math was the one subject I always struggled in. And so now when I look back at architecture, I'm like, oh man, if you're going to be a good architect, you got to be good at math. You got to be really good at pre-planning everything.
Sure.
You can't try it and see because you don't want a building to fall down.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, the architecture thing, I don't think that would have gone very far if I tried pursuing that. But I took architecture in freshman year. And then from there, it was like shop class and then all the art classes and a photography class. It wasn't until college when I kind of rediscovered drawing. And that had to do with me going to Portland State through the graphic design program. And one of the teachers that I had, it was in sophomore year, was like super enthusiastic about graphic design and like analog processes. There was an album by Hawk Nelson, which is not a band that I listened to, but the student made the album artworks called Invisible Creature. And they had monsters and stuff on there. And I was like, that's so cool. And I remember a sophomore project for the graphic design class was to appropriate a style. And I thought, I want to appropriate that monster style that Invisible Creature did. This project. And so once I did that, I was like, oh man, I really enjoyed drawing the characters and then trying to integrate them in the graphic design sense of like, okay, there's got to be a package, it's got to be a poster, it's got to turn into an envelope. Like, how does that work? And then from there, I learned that it's really fun to take illustrated elements and integrate those into branding because I feel like it makes the branding so much more unique when there's illustrated qualities as opposed to like very clean, perfect vectors that have like that nice hard edge where it's like right quality is kind of invisible. So from there, I started to do more drawing, doing it with graphic design. And then, you know, the kids book thing came along. And so then I pushed the illustration thing even further. And now I'm at this point where I have my own kids book out that I got to write and illustrate myself.
With architecture, you might have been a really unique architect. You never know. It might have been crazy, you know? You would have been really popular. Who knows?
Maybe I could have figured out some way to make that work.
Yeah. So when you did get back into like pursuing graphic design and like drawing and illustrating, you started out working like interning and things like that and working for companies. And then you decided to sort of take your own path. What led up to that choice to decide to sort of go off on your own? Was it just sort of knowing that you were like connected enough and your work was good enough that you could just do it yourself? You didn't need the backing of a company or something like that?
The whole idea of working for myself had been there for quite a long time. And that's all because of why I got into graphic design. You know, all the studios and artists that inspired me, they all go and do their own thing. And what it's like, oh man, I love what they're doing. You go to college and you're like, someday I'll have my own studio and I'll thing and that thing all on my own. But you go through college, at least for me, I went through college. I'm like, no, I need a job when I get out. And so I got an internship and that was a really good experience. But the whole time I was kind of thinking about stuff on the side. Like, what do I do with my time on the side? Because while a lot of the stuff that I'm doing at this job is fairly enjoyable, there's a lot of ideas that I have that I want to bring to life. And so I would do stuff on the side, projects. Eventually it got to the point where I was so eager to try and like work on some of those ideas myself. The kids book really kind of helped put fuel behind that. Me and my wife had been talking about it for a long time. And so we finally got to the point with the job where I was like, okay, let's try this and see what happens. It's not easy. I've read so many stories about people who are like, yeah, I quit my job. And then like I was making 10 times more than what I was at the job, 6 months, whatever. And that hasn't been my experience. It's been tough. But because I work for myself, I get to dictate my own schedule. And I'm really structured with the way that I do things. I'm really deadline driven.
Sure.
So all that stuff isn't a problem. But because I can make my own schedule, I can make time for these projects and ideas to come to life.
Yeah, I mean, you only really hear about the people that are like successful or doing like way better because, you know, the people that plummeted to failure aren't going to write an article about it. You know what I mean? When
I worked at that job, a lot of times I'd listen to podcasts because the job wasn't quite challenging enough to like preoccupy my mind. So I needed other things to kind of help inspire me. But then when I started working for myself, it's like, I can't listen to podcasts and work at the same time. There's not enough. I need to be able to focus. So it's just music now.
That's interesting. We talked about the monsters a little bit, but and how that sort of first came about. But if you go through your Instagram, there's a lot of monsters on there, of all different types. Why did that stick for you? And like, what is it about drawing, like, I guess, creatures that don't exist or maybe only exist in your mind? Why do you enjoy that so much?
I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Why do I draw these monsters? I mean, they're fun. Yeah. And when I'm drawing, I'm just drawing. I'm not thinking about how this will fit into a graphic design project. So it's kind of like, well, if you're going to doodle, you get time and you put some headphones on and the world melts away and you're just going to doodle something off the cuff. Like, what kind of thing would that be? And monsters end up being that thing where I guess it's easy to kind of turn my brain off and just draw for fun. I like the fact that I can look at the monsters and they make me smile. They don't make me angry or stressed. Sure. They're fun. There's so many creative challenges with them to like try different shapes and colors and textures. You can apply all kinds of rules around them. I think also monsters are fairly unique. I mean, I do see plenty of people drawing monsters, but you don't see too much of it. I don't think monsters will ever become some sort of trend that the graphic design world takes on. All of a sudden, every brand is integrating monsters. So yeah, they're fun to draw. They make me smile. They get my kids' attention. The kids like them. And I feel like because I have this natural interest towards them, they kind of help make like the whole of my work maybe a little bit more unique or stand out a little bit more. When I stop and think about what my friends say I do, like what kind of stuff, like what kind of artwork do I draw? They'll be like, oh yeah, Jason, he draws monsters. I'm like, I don't just draw monsters. I got like ghosts and Bigfoot. And
there's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
People always remember the monsters. So I try to lean into that a little bit more.
Yeah. Do you ever realize, or did you realize, like when you first became like a parent, did your style or like what you became interested in drawing change at all? Or like even because you wanted to sort of, I guess, maybe not even consciously, but draw things that they would enjoy as well?
In college, I was really inspired by mid-century illustration. And those colors were like very desaturated. And in music packaging, a lot of the artwork that was inspiring me at the time had similar color palettes. So when I look at my college days projects, everything was very kind of like muted, desaturated vintage colors. And then when I was working as a brand designer, there was a project I was given that it was focused on doing like a brand refresh for the kids category of shoes. And so I remember working on that project and just all of a sudden diving into super bright colors. And so from that point on, my artwork, everything got way more colorful. Like the color bumped way up to 11. So there's that part that kind of inspired things. And then with the kids, my oldest, she's 7.5. She loves doing artwork and has always been like that. So whenever we're sitting down and we're drawing, it's just easy to go into autopilot and be like, oh, let's draw a monster. And we'll draw a circle, legs on them and give them a big eyeball. And she kind of follows along. Plus, it's fun to see their faces when they look at the monster, like, look what I drew. This is a monster.
Do you notice that maybe even by drawing with you, does she sort of pick up on like things that you do, like as well in her artwork?
Yeah. Last year, she was in first grade, and we had a conference with her teacher. And the teacher showed us this project that she was working on, and she integrated my ghost character, Fred the Ghost, into it. And I was like, what? I did not know she was doing that. She was taking one of my characters and making a story out of it.
Oh, so yeah. Wow. You're going to have to get some royalties from that, if it becomes a thing, who knows? But yeah, there's also a lot on your Instagram that I wanted to talk about, because another artist I talked to did this as well, where they took photos and sort of basically turned he did it with fruit and stuff and vegetables that people would send him and turned them into characters basically. And you have done the same thing where you take like still photos and you turn them into characters. And so I just wanted to ask, like, what does that like work for you in your mind as an artist, like taking something that's not character driven necessarily and turning it into something that is?
I guess I kind of think of myself as a fairly experimental artist. So I wasn't, that whole food series, I called it Foodles, Food Plus Foods. That came about just randomly. This person that I worked with is really good at baking. She made me cookies. So to say thank you, I took a picture of a cookie. I took a bite first, and then I drew some sort of character traits on him and made that an art print and sent it to her. So, that brought out this idea of like, oh man, this would be fun to do like a whole series around like these cookies. Like, I have to eat the cookie, but draw some sort of character elements onto it. And so then I decided to turn that into a series, and I just kind of followed that until I got to the point where I was like, I can't focus on this anymore. I got to do, I'm getting too busy with something else. And so then I kind of stopped.
Yeah. Does that work for something different though in your mind, that it's not like a blank canvas? There is something there that you have to work from or work off of basically to draw something?
I think I'm probably the type of artist that does need something to work from. Like, I imagine if I was one of those painters from the 60s or whatever, I'd be the type that just throws a splat of paint on the canvas and then go, okay, I can see this being like a beach or something. Sure. And then from there.
Okay. Yeah, no, that is there like specific pieces of art that you've done that have took on a life of their own, like that you were surprised by? Like, is there any pieces that you created that were like, I can't believe this made people react this way? Like, even talking about your daughter drawing the ghost or like, but just other people too? The
ghost is definitely one of them. And I've been trying to do something with ghosts for a long time. There was a short period in my life where there was a lot of stress happening. I think as a result of that stress, I was having extremely vivid dreams of ghosts. Oh. And they were so vivid that oftentimes they'd wake me up in the middle of the night and I'd be on a high alert mode and freak out my wife. And so that situation was interesting to me, and I wanted to kind of explore that. And I was like, how do I integrate ghosts into whatever I'm doing? So I was always looking for a way to do that. And eventually it turned into me creating a character called Fred the Ghost. I did a little series where I would draw the ghost onto pictures that I took.
Sure.
This was like in 2016 or 17. And then that little series kind of petered out. And then I thought, well, I got to do something with the ghost somehow. And so then I turned him into an enamel pin. And then I made like a little short story zine with him. Then I started my own art brand last year. And that character has been a big part of the shop. And people seem to really like that character more than I expected. And like I said, with my daughter, she really likes that character too, which, I wasn't quite expecting that. So that character is probably the biggest example of it going bigger than I expected.
I guess talking about that, you created your own company with like a store and like around the kids book, but there's also like pins and all that stuff. Did you say that started last year that you did that?
Yeah, I officially launched it last year in September. Okay. So it's been going for a little over a year now.
Was that one of the project where you're sort of like shooting from your holster and just going to go for it? Or was that a very long process of like planning out to try to figure out what you wanted to do with that?
It's been a long process, but the art brand, Hi Hello There, that one very planned out. But if you remove the naming from it and you look at it as Jason's trying to figure out how to create his own art brand and sell art, that's, I think, version 3.
Okay.
There's like two versions prior to that I was trying out. And the second version was definitely more shoot from the hip. The first one was just definitely all shoot from the hip, and like each time it's like, okay, well, this isn't quite working out the way I was hoping. So I'm going to scrap this and I'm going to come back to the drawing board and try and figure out like what wasn't working and how can I make improvements? How can I do this differently? So this iteration has definitely been more planned and strategic.
What wasn't working for you in the past like 2 versions that you did? What were some of the things that were, I guess, not panning out like you thought?
Well, a lot of it's just me guessing as to what I think might be the thing that's not working. But version 2 of the name was called The Ghostly Figure. And it was all centered around that ghost. Maybe I just didn't give it enough time too, but it got to the point where it's like, okay, this isn't getting any traction. I'm clearly not doing things right. And I thought, well, the name probably doesn't quite match up with what I'm putting out there. Plus, what I'm putting out there, I think, is kind of hard to sell art prints. Those don't sell very well, even though I'm extremely enthusiastic about art prints. And so prior to that, everything was just under my name, Jason Heglund, and wasn't 100% serious at that time with that. I was also working full-time, employed full-time. So I was just doing that on the side, trying this, trying that. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to get serious about this. And so version 2 was The Ghostly Figure. And then that one didn't quite work out, or I thought it wasn't going anywhere. And so I thought, okay, I need to, stop. I need to rethink what I'm doing and try and be more strategic, more curated with what I'm doing, more intentional. And so I think I spent like a year and a half planning out this version 3, really sitting with things a lot longer. Plus, I also got really busy there's this book that I illustrated for my neighbor. I think it's a 32-page picture book, and that took me like 6 months to do.
Wow.
Which, made it difficult to do anything else, which is fine the way it was. And there was no reason to rush. And so version 3, which is under the name Hi, Hello There, I'm more happy with, but I'm also like, okay, I need to make sure I give this a lot more time and just keep working to grow things.
Yeah. You mentioned a bunch of different, how many books have you either helped on or done yourself? How many have there been?
Well, I've only illustrated one book that I wrote, and that's the unicorn book that just came out. Prior to that, I've done like 5 or 6 books for other people.
Yeah.
When I was working full time, I was doing the first kids book, which is called The Wonderful World of Creatures in Code. And so I did that on the side of my full-time job. And I think that one took up like 8 to 10 months.
Wow.
I was really excited about that project, and I absolutely loved drawing those pictures. The way that the authors work, they're like, okay, this is going to be like an ABC book about code. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give you one line that's going to go on each page, and it's going to start with whatever letter from the alphabet. From there, Jason, it's up to you to come up with a concept for the page. So here's page 1, go. And that was like all the direction they gave me. They said they love the monsters. They want to have monsters and kids in the book. Okay, cool. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun to be able to brainstorm the ideas. It was very collaborative. We were working back and forth, refining the ideas. And I loved doing that so much that I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe this is something I can do full time for myself. And so eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to try and work for myself. So I did that. I had another book that I was in the process of working on. And I've discovered since then that it's extremely hard to make it on your own illustrating books without the backing of like a publisher or an illustration agency.
Sure.
I've had quite a few people approach me about their ideas, like indie authors that have never done books before. And they're like, hey, I got this idea. I love what you do. I think it'd be great for our story. How much do you charge? And it's like, okay, well, here's how much it costs to do a 32-page book. Whoa, that's way more expensive than I thought. I was thinking like $500. Like, I mean, that's going to take me 6 months to do. If I'm doing this 6 months, I can't do any other projects. I got to be able to pay my bills. And that happened quite a few times. I even had this smaller publishing company reach out to do a book, and I did a book, and I was happy with the end result. The pay was not very good. So my enthusiasm for illustrating books for other people has gone down because I discovered you can't make it financially if you're doing it for indie authors. If you can get on an illustration agency that specializes in picture books for publishers, you might be able to make it. Although I think quite a few of those artists still have like a side gig that they do. So yeah, the kids' books, I've done quite a few of them for other people, and pretty much all of them I would say have been good experiences, but it's just financially a really difficult thing to work out. So kind of like leaning away from that. I'd rather just do my own kids' book now and sell it myself, as opposed to trying to figure out how to bring other people's ideas to life.
Not knowing the financial stuff behind it, I was going to ask if you liked the sort of longer form projects where you are working on something, the same thing for 6 months, or do you prefer to like work for like shorter term projects? Is it hard to stay motivated for 7 months? I mean, I would assume it's harder when you're not getting paid as you should be.
It is hard. I think I do prefer the shorter projects. The last book that I illustrated, that was a big one. It was that 32-page book for my neighbor. That one took about 6 months, and it was also kind of a little bit outside of my style. It was a little bit more, it was focused on humans as opposed to monsters.
Sure.
And there's a lot more detail and shading and stuff. So it took me longer to do, and it felt like it was just taking forever to get through it. I'm happy with the way that it turned out, but there does come a point where you're working on one of those books and it's like, are we done yet?
I gotta do this again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now that you're working by yourself, and I'm assuming since you worked at like agencies and things like that, it was sort of similar, where when I've talked to graphic designers, it's interesting because they talk about the fact that how different illustration can be from graphic design, and how, you know, with graphic design, you have to mold your specific style to the client's needs and what they're looking for and their brand guidelines and things like that. And illustration is sort of, I guess, more free to do what you want. Going into school for graphic design, did that stunt your, I guess, interest in illustration, or did it make you more interested to like get an escape and be able to do your own thing, basically?
Going to school for graphic design actually revitalized my interest in illustration, because prior to that, I wasn't really drawing that much. I was focused on probably more like collage based stuff, you know, anything related to music packaging, which a lot of it was like awesome Photoshop collage type stuff. So when I started going to school for graphic design, I wasn't anticipating anything illustration related, but you know, because of the teachers, I was like, oh my God, you can do this. You can integrate illustration with graphic design, and that creates like this whole new thing that's a little bit more unique. So yeah, college reinvigorated illustration.
Do you have a favorite piece that you've done, either like for yourself or for like a client? Is there a specific just project that you've worked on that you've really enjoyed more than others?
As far as my personal stuff goes, like I constantly think about, well, are you happy with everything that you're doing? I'm like, when I take a step back, I'm like, yeah, actually, I really do enjoy creating a lot of stuff. Here, I'll show you one thing real quick. I did a Kickstarter a little while ago, and I had some little monster pins made, and that's awesome. I'm really happy with the way that they turned out. So this guy's named Ollie, and I have bigger plans for this character specifically. I've actually had this idea for a book since 2015 that I've been slowly trying to work towards. And so maybe, I don't know if next year I'll be the year that I actually start working on it, 'cause I have another one that I'm already planning on. So yeah, I have more things planned with those characters, and they're a lot of fun. I enjoy drawing the characters, and people seem to enjoy seeing them. If you go through the Instagram grid, you'll see that character actually shows up in my studio space a lot.
Yeah, I saw that. Talking about that, because you draw so many different things, what to you like sticks out and was like, this could be a character that, you know, has a book or has more potential, and this is one I just sort of just drew for fun? Like, what is the criteria, or what do you see in your head that makes one different than the other?
Well, with that character, I've been drawing little fuzzy one-eyed monsters since college. which they stem from that album cover that I told you about by Hawk. And they had some monsters on there. There was one super hairy, one-eyed creature on there, and I liked him, so I drew him for that college project. And since then, he's kind of like been developing, and I've integrated him in a lot of things. A lot of ideas have come out of my head that utilize him. Unicorns I draw a lot of because unicorns seem to get a lot of traction. They get people's attention. Do you know what Crafty Wonderland is?
I don't think so.
There's this store in downtown Portland that has a whole bunch of like really cool merch and accessories. And they usually have 2 markets that they do a year. I think that they're at the convention center. And I did one of them in 2016, and I had a whole bunch of art prints for sale. And one of the art prints that I had was just this fat little unicorn eating a slice of pizza. And no matter what, people would walk by and see that and be like, oh, that's so cool. Or they'd just flat out buy it. And so that got me thinking, okay, like people really like unicorns and pizza, which is one of the reasons why the book that I made is a unicorn with pizza. The Fred the Ghost character, that stemmed from my dreams, but then a lot of people seem to like that character. So I think for the most part, the criteria is like if I put one of these characters out there and people somehow react in a positive way, then I start thinking like, oh, I wonder if I should do something with that. And if I was going to do something, what would I do? Then with the other little one-eyed monster characters, I've been drawing those guys for a long time. So they're always something that I continue to draw and try to figure out like what else can I do with them?
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a similar characteristic, even though they're different things in each of those drawings that leads people to be more interested in that specifically. I don't know.
I'm not sure. Like I know that I have some of my friends, they see my stuff and they're like, oh, this is very Jason looking.
Oh, sure.
So when I look at my stuff, I'm constantly questioning like, what is my style? Is it this or is it that? Maybe I should do it like this, or maybe I need to reference some other artist and try and integrate the way that they do that.
Yeah.
So I'm always questioning that, and I'm not 100% sure if there's something that ties all of
together,
characters together for people. I think maybe there's a general vibe, definitely. Like everything's very kind of lighthearted and fun and colorful, approachable.
Yeah. No, for sure. I agree. And before we wrap up here, what is the name of your children's book so people can go look for it? Where can people find you and like your social media and stuff like that, and your shop as well?
Okay. The kids' book is called Hey Unicorn, Where's Your Pizza? This is available in my shop online under the name Hi Hello There. If you go on Instagram, it's at Hi Hello There CO. And the website's www.hihellothere.com, hihellothere.co.com. Although if you just typed Jason Heglund into the Googles, I'm sure that
you'll come up.
Hello There would show up. My website should show up, which is linked up. So it should be pretty easy to find.
Yeah, in the book, there's also, as I mentioned at the beginning, and I was watching, there, you do a read along on your Instagram. You can go check that out if you want to go check out the book. Yeah, I think it's awesome though. So it would be definitely a great gift, no matter the time. Is it going to be on your site for the foreseeable future?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
As long as until they sell out, until I get rid of the batch that I had.
Sure. Well, yeah. So go check that out. Go check out your illustrations on social and your website. I really love your style. I love what you're doing. Yeah, I really think it is approachable. It is something that I almost sort of feel too. It's coming because I'm 29. It almost feels like nostalgic in a way to me too, for some reason. I think, it sort of connects with like watching cartoons when you're growing up. You know, there's a sort of vibe there too, I think.
I watched a lot of cartoons when I was a kid.
There you go. So maybe that's it. But thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been awesome talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you reaching out to me after finding me and like taking the time to see my work and reach out to me. I appreciate it. It's been fun. It's been good chatting with you and kind of giving you a little bit of the backstory behind everything.
No, but yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Make sure you check out his work. It's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time.
All right. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. Nice meeting you.